What's up, you YouTubers? It's your host, DeAndre. Now, today I'm going to talk about something that really needs to be talked about. And it's about what really matters here in America. And what influenced me to make this video is because I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, which I do a lot of because it's how I make my content for my YouTube videos. But, anyways, what I've been thinking about was how there's a great divide between the rich and the poor, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. But today I'm only going to focus on how there's a divide between the rich and the poor. Now, one main difference that I see between the rich and the poor is that the rich get treated better in this country than the poor. See, the poor, when you look at the poor, they basically are looked at as if they don't really matter. The rich, they looked at as if they actually matter, as if they actually have value to them. And you guys will see what I'm talking about further into the video. But for now, I'm going to just bring up some statistics real quick. Some crime statistics from 2014 because obviously they don't have 2015 out yet. So, in 2014, there were 1,165,383 acts of violent crime. And there's also 15% of American people living in poverty, which is 46.7 million people. And that came from the U.S. Census Bureau. And the population of America is 318.9 million. So that's a big chunk, if you kind of think of it some way. And also, another thing I want to bring up. There's 1.1 million kids who drop out of high school every year. That's a big deal if you think about it. And from American Psychological Association, 20% of kids live in poor families. The National Institute of Justice says that the most common ages for crime is late teens to just about the mid-20s, early 20s. Basically like 15, 16, all the way up to like 24, 25. Some sources may vary and tell you like 21, but in general, it's mid to early 20s from their late teens. That's just generally the age for crimes where you have it happening a lot. Now, if you think about it, how all crime happens, it happens from most of the time situations of living in economically deprived areas, not having enough money. Anywhere where there's not enough money, most likely there's going to be crime. Now, I'm not saying that all crime happens from poor people, but there's a great chunk of crime happening from poor people. And let me show you how it works, how this economic cycle works within these different divides of rich and poor. So you have rich kids. They go to the well-funded schools to get the best education. So therefore, they're more likely, sometimes they can, drop out or something, not go to college, but just in general, most of the times they are more likely to go to better colleges. And most of the times when they go to better colleges, they get the better jobs. And then they reproduce influence offspring to repeat this cycle. And then you come down here to the poors. You have poor kids going to not so well-funded schools because, let's face it, cities where you have these low income schools, they're not really funded well because they really don't care about those schools because, again, the poor is overlooked a lot in our country. So they go to these schools where they're not getting as much education as the rich kids are. So, because of this, they either go to the good colleges or maybe even the better colleges if they're really smart. And then, if they do go to the really good colleges or better colleges, they reproduce or they apply for better jobs or just the good jobs, and then they reproduce influence offspring, and then they can reproduce rich kids. So that's not the only outcome for poor kids, however. See, with poor kids, they kind of have, diverse little options. Rich kids, they usually kind of stay on the one path. However, they can also, choose a life of bad activities. But for the most part, with poor kids, if they go through school not learning much, dropping out of high school, not really wanting to work and have nothing in life better to do, they're probably gonna live a life of crime, and if they reproduce kids, they're gonna be uninfluenced offspring, and they're just gonna end up being what their parents were when they grew up, being poor, because they weren't, having as much of an influence as kids who were rich. And then you also may not have necessarily poor kids committing crime. You just have them, doing low paying jobs, and they're somewhat uninfluenced because they're still living in the low income areas, and so they're basically reliving the lifestyle of their parents of being poor as a kid. And so it's either up to them to choose what lifestyle they want to live. Now, I'm just basically doing all of this to say that if you think about it, you really take the time to really see how it all works out. Crime is really happening from the lack of money. See, if us as Americans would really take the time to care about the poor people who live in our country, we'll probably have as much crime as we do. We wouldn't be having all these bad statistics. If more money was put into these economically deprived areas where there's a lot of low income people living there, and we put more money into the schools that are in those areas, those kids who grow up in those areas would have just as much as an advantage as rich kids do when they go to their schools and get the best education. They could also have the same amount of education as the rich kids that go to the and have the same amount of chance of going to the best colleges and having the best jobs and reproducing the same type of kids to live that type of lifestyle, to do better in life. But see, we like to, have other distractions like NASA. We always want to talk about the trip to Mars, which last time I checked, isn't going to happen until like 20 years from now in the 2030s. But yeah, we make a big deal about it, and yet we spend a whole bunch of money on NASA every year. And then we always quick to worry about other countries and how they have poverty and how we're so concerned with them. But the moment when we talk about the poor people who are living in our country, it seemed to be overlooked a lot. And my main question about it is why? Why, as America, we have more sympathy for people who live in different countries who are poor than their own people here in our country that are poor. And if you don't believe me how poor people are treated less nicer than rich people, I want you to take a look at the Flint water crisis. In Flint, there's a big water crisis going on. There are poor people who are living in Flint who have contaminated water, all of because the city is not really paying close attention or even caring for the poor people to even make sure that they have good water just as much as the privileged people. See, what they do is they like to, be very arrogant and feel the need to, really crap on poor people. That's why the poor people in Flint are living the way they are. However, Flint wasn't, always like this. Because if you look at Flint now, not only do they have a water crisis, but there's also a lot of crime. But here's the reason why there's also a lot of crime going on and other things like the unemployment rate and all these poor people living in Flint. Because, Flint used to be very big in the automobile industry. They have factories, car factories to make cars and all that. However, you start having these car factories go bankrupt, and yeah, a lot of people get unemployed and basically be without money. And that kind of led to the big rise in crime and unemployment rates. And you have these poor people living in the city of Flint now, and now the city government of Flint want to do the poor people bad who are suffering because of the unemployment rates and because there's not a lot of businesses for them to have jobs to do. They want to, make them suffer basically, and don't come to me talking about how it was on accident, because if you ask me, I believe that the city of Flint did this on purpose. I think that they did this on purpose just to basically say that we don't care about poor people and they're not the ones who are really doing something with our country, maybe productively. That's what they're basically saying with this solo situation. And Detroit's basically the same way, with the prime example being how money is a reason for the downfall of its city. See, Detroit was also a booming city in the automobile industry. They were having a whole bunch of factories, car companies there, Henry Ford. And by the way, I was born in Detroit, so woo woo. But anyways, Then you had a lot of companies go bankrupt, and so a lot of people who were working for these car companies, they didn't have jobs, so there wasn't any money there for people to really get. So that led to the rise in crime again. I could continuously talk about this all day, but I'd rather not. It's easier said than done. If we take the time to fund these areas where there's not a lot of money, not a lot of economic activity going on, we could do better as a country and there wouldn't be so much crime going on. And it's proven anywhere where there's not as much money, where it's economically deprived, there's going to be more likely to have crime. It's just facts here, people. So I really hope that us as Americans can really change our view on this great divide between the poor and the rich, and we treat the poor the same way we treat the rich. How is it that the privileged get more when it should be the other way around? Because the poor have less. And when I say poor, I'm not talking about the people who are unwillingly to try to look for some type of work, who are just lazy or just getting government aid. I'm talking about the poor people who actually want to make money, who actually are working hard every day just to make money, just so that they can get by. Those type of poor people shouldn't have to put up with the way our government treat them. I mean, yeah, you have all these financial aid things, but I mean, it still doesn't change the fact that they are overlooked a lot, and that their kids are overlooked a lot, and their opinions don't really matter as much as the rich people's opinions would matter. Now, I challenge every single American to again take the time to reevaluate the way we treat these poor people, and I hope Flint can definitely reevaluate the way that they are treating the poor people who are living in their own city. All right, now I hope you guys like and subscribe. Deuces.